dementia units can be fun places to work at, because once dementia residents are settled and they realise that they have no memory or a very poor memory and that everyone else there is in the same boat, then they start to relax with that, relax, unwind, and often start to have fun because they're not worried about the past because they don't remember the past. They're not concerned or fearful of the future because they don't think about that. So for them, for dementia residents, they're present. And it's in the present moment, actually, that we have the most fun. So they're big observers. They see everything that's going on. They make comment of what's out the window, the staff, the other residents, the relatives, all the goings on. So fun in a dementia unit is very apparent once you sit back, relax, and start enjoying it and get into the swing of it. I mean, it's a certain culture. It's definitely got a culture all of its own. And it does take some time to be able to tune into it, but it might take 1 or 2 months to do that. But once you get into the flow of it, they really are enjoyable places. I mean, for example, I'll give you one example. There was a lady where I worked at one of the dementia units I worked at. She was a very bright, sparkly sort of lady. She had a great personality, always dressed in pink, very short, only about 4'10", but she had a big energy about her. She didn't have many relatives that visited, except one nephew who came every Saturday with his 2 children, who were both 3 and 4, and that was a delight. Rest of the week, she entertained all the visitors. She was incredible. But the interesting thing about her was that she'd start off the conversation in an intelligent, informed, clear way. You know, everything was making sense and she was telling this story, that story. She'd had quite a, dramatic, interesting life. 3 husbands, all had died and all the rest of it. And she'd sort of tell you the story and then all of a sudden it would trail off into another direction. And because she'd been so astute at the beginning of the conversation, you couldn't actually tell whether it was you not understanding it or whether it was her saying something that didn't make sense. And this is often the case in dementia units. So what you do, the best approach, is just to sit back and enjoy it. Whether it makes sense or whether it doesn't make sense, it's just as entertaining. You come to the realization that not everything has to make sense in this world, especially not in a dementia unit. And it can be just as much fun, if not more so, because you get out of your head into your heart, get the old, endorphins and laughter going. And it really is quite funny. There's so many characters in dementia units. They perform and there's lots of dramas and theatrics and what people can do. There was the one lady, she was very eccentric. She'd come from London. She was an immigrant, very well spoken, astute, knew all her history, all of Shakespeare. And she was sort of quite model-like, tall and thin. And she seemed to be able to sort of wrap anything around her and look good in it. So what she did, what she'd spent half the day doing, is she'd just whip off the white chiffon tablecloths that the nurses had carefully put over all the cutlery to keep it clean. But she'd take it off and then she'd wrap it around as a scarf, a shawl, a belt, a headset. She'd get 2 or 3 and she'd make this whole mess, dramatic outfit out of them. Honestly, they were really good outfits. She could have gone on the catwalk with them. She just sort of had that persona where she could carry things off. And she'd parade around the, dementia unit with these outfits on to the praise of all the relatives and residents and the poor old staff. There they were trying to keep everything clean, tidy, keep to the rules and regulations, but you never really can in a dementia unit. So that was one example of humour. And I mean, there's many other examples. There's some very bright, quick-witted people too in dementia units. The same facility where I worked, there was a woman she had a really good sense of humour. She was bright, well-read, but she could be quite sarcastic. But she was never sarcastic to the disadvantaged residents. That's one thing in a dementia unit. Residents are never sarcastic. They never put other dementia residents down who are less disabled, who are more physically disabled, who their cognition is less, they can't communicate, their walking is difficult, whatever the disability. Dementia residents are very sensitive to those that are less able than themselves, thankfully. So they might be sarcastic to each other if you're of the same cognitive level, but not to those that are disabled. So that's a blessing. They have empathy in that way. So anyway, this woman, she was bright, and there was another guy, equally bright, from the army. She was a school teacher, and she'd say to him, oh, you think you're pretty smart, don't you? And he'd say, well, it's how you use your thinking. You've got to, think clearly, think deeply, and organise your thoughts. Plan each day. And he did. He was a very good thinker. But within all that mix, a dementia unit caters to everyone, doesn't it? I mean, everyone's got such a big, vast range of cognition. And the wonderful thing, though, cognition, there's a range. Ability with speaking, there's a range. Communication, there's a range. Some people are aphasic and they can't speak. But the wonderful thing is that the sense of humour and the laughter, everyone can clue into that. And that's the basis of friendship. Often at a dementia unit, people can't speak, but you can be friendly with them and become friends with them, especially if you have a similar sense of humour and you both click into that and have a good laugh and realise you're on the same wavelength. I've got one example of this that was really funny. There was one woman I was working with, and she was anxious, shut down, nervous, and spoke rarely. But when she did, she was bright, but she wouldn't give away much. And I spent so much time with her trying to work out how to connect and encourage her. And she'd come around to maybe say a few words, and then she'd say, oh, I don't want to speak all the time. I don't want to speak all the time, when she'd said like about 3 words, in the whole hour. So, it was an ongoing effort or battle really to get her to speak. But this one day, I thought, I kept going, kept trying. This one day I said to her, now look, just try to speak. Just speak how you would normally speak, in a natural way, in a relaxed way. Just be yourself. Just be natural. And she said, I'm a fairly natural woman. And I thought, aha, okay, so that's the humour. Yeah, so I got that humour. That was funny. The Carole King, who was it? Aretha Franklin's song, I'm a Natural Woman. She'd clued into that, and I'm a fairly natural woman. And she was actually. She was from a farm. She was a great sportswoman. She was natural. So it was a good line. And from then on, I knew that she understood me. Even if she preferred not to speak or dismissed what I said, she did understand me, and she had a good sense of humour. So I knew in the future I could tap into that. And we got a long way, actually. We developed a good relationship. She was very generous with her information and insights on dementia and the dementia blanks and the dementia spin and all the problems related to that. She actually divulged that to me. She explained to me how people with dementia have what she called a fuzzy brain, fuzzy mind, and how the best way to get out of that state was through positive thinking and building back confidence. So she was a great pioneer in the work, actually, in the end. But at the beginning, it wasn't all that easy until I tapped into that humour and realised that she had a lot going on there. So that's the one way that you could sort of channel your way in. So these 2 books, The Resident's Voice and The Resident's Rise, both from a dementia unit, I've written, and they're on Amazon. Thank you for your viewing and your support and subscriptions, and please subscribe if you're interested and pass on links. Thanks.